Welfare Committee to order. We have a full complement of members, Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Zine, and myself. I'm going to ask that item 1, item 2, and item 5 be put on the consent calendar, and that item 4 be continued. So without objection, if we will call 1, 2, and 5 the consent calendar. And so we will begin with item number 3.
Item number 3, Department of General Services report relative to a request for exemptions pursuant to Charter Section 1001B2 for 6 positions in connection with the Jenny parking lot site modification, Alaska backfill, and ADA upgrades.
Do we have a staff person here to speak to this item?
I was hoping for General Services, but I don't see him.
Are you expecting him to come shortly? So we could.
I told him I would be here. I don't know his calendar.
Okay. Well, I just have one relatively simple question. I don't know if you have the answer to it. What does it mean that these positions are not permanent work? Does that mean they're not permanent because they're only going to exist for 5 years, or that they'll be working intermittently for 5 years?
The funding source is the CIEP program at the airport, and that's a 5-year program. So we may be coming to you in 5 years and asking you to renew it, but the funding source is 5 years.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, instead of exempting these positions, if they should just be resolution authorities that get reauthorized every 5 years.
Mr. Yoshimura would probably have to answer that. However, if at any time the memorandum of understanding between the Department of General Services and LAWA wants to be canceled by either party, if they're exempt positions, then they just revert back to their former positions.
The positions listed are regularly civil service classification, civil service positions. So what is being requested at this time is that they be exempt from civil service, given their short-term duration of 5 years. The resolution authorities speak to the budgetary concerns, not the civil service exemption provisions, which are necessary for these positions.
Okay, and how close are we to the cap of the number of exempt positions?
This section that they're citing for these positions do not apply to the 150.
Oh, it doesn't apply to the
Correct.
cap. Okay, so I thought we'd be getting dangerously close.
We are dangerously
otherwise.
close, but luckily these do not apply to that
Oh,
provision.
much better. Any questions, comments, colleagues? No. No. All right, so then without objection, we will move this item forward
Thank you.
and approve the exemptions. Item 6.
Item number 6, communication from the mayor relative to retroactive acceptance of the 2011 Minority Business Development Agency Business Center Program grant funds in the amount of $200,000 in retroactive approval of a contractual agreement with USC, Government Civic Engagement, executed and submitted as part of the joint application process to the MBDA effective April 1st, 2011 through March 31st, 2016. We also received a report subsequent to the release of the agenda from the CAO.
And if the CEO could explain the grant and the technical adjustments that have been requested by the mayor's office.
Oh, sure. Camilla Fong, Office of the CAO. This item before you is the Minority Business Development Agency Minority Business Center Program Grant. It's actually a grant program over a 5-year period, and it awards the city a grant subrecipient grant allocation of $100,000 each year. The primary role of this grant is to promote growth and global competitiveness of the minority business enterprise community. So the MBC program hopes to stimulate business development, job creation, and enhance long-term growth and self-sufficiency of business. I also have Linda Smith here, who oversees the grant program for the mayor's office.
And I understand that a revision to the CAO recommendations needs to be made to include the transfer of additional uncommitted balances.
Yes, that's for item 5H of the recommendations, adding two more additional uncommitted balances from 1995, bringing it forward to the current year.
Very good. Any other questions, comments on this one? If not, we will move this item forward and approve the CAO recommendations with the technical adjustments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7.
Item 7, CLA report relative to establishing a City of Los Angeles Employees Memorial Day to honor and remember city employees who have lost their lives in the service of the city.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Before you, a report on the feasibility of a city employees Memorial Day. This is a response to a motion from Councilmember LaBonge. We think this is a good idea, and it's appropriate, and we recommend that the motion be amended to establish this holiday or memorial observance.
And any idea how much this will cost annually?
I don't think there'd be a cost annually just to have something, but if there's a plaque or something like that, then there might be a cost.
So it would be very modest.
I would assume so, but I can't say for certain.
Let's see. Any other questions or comments?
On Memorial Day, that would not mean that it would be like a holiday.
No, it would just be a day set aside to honor those who have died in service to the city. It wouldn't be a day off or anything like that.
It'd just be more active observance of the holiday.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? If not, let's move this item forward without objection. Okay, item 8.
Item 8 is continued from October 2nd, 2012. CAO's report response to motion, LaBonge Musciano, relative to setting up a payroll deduction program enabling all current and retired city personnel to voluntarily have payroll deductions for premiums, fees, dues, assessments, or contributions to help employees learn prosperity, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, independent payroll affiliation. Additionally, a report was received subsequent to the release of the agenda.
And this has been pending for a while, so I think we just wanted a status report on what's taken so long, how close are we to moving this forward, et cetera.
Excuse me, would you like to hear from city departments first or from the speakers?
From the departments first.
Okay. Carolyn Cooper with the CAO's office. I can't tell if this is on. We released a report yesterday. If you don't have a copy, I brought extra copies.
I don't think we've seen it. 8. So since we're getting this report at the last minute, I wonder if you could just walk us through what
Sure.
your findings are in this report.
Sure, absolutely. The section of the ad code that provides the authority for organizations to have access to voluntary payroll deductions by city employees is Ad Code Section 4.203. And under that section, there's only 3 categories for organizations to qualify to receive voluntary payroll deduction status. And we did our research and reviewed to see how this organization may qualify. And it does not qualify under any of the 3 categories. The first category is a recognized employee organization with current MOU representing city employees, such as Engineers and Architects Association, the Police Protective League, etc. The second category, an organization must demonstrate that it has an active membership of 250 active city employees, or if it's already been granted such status that it maintains at least 100 active or retired employees maintaining enrollment and payroll dues deductions. The third category is a nonprofit umbrella charitable organization approved by the police department to participate in our combined charitable organization program. Those organizations have to be a 501c3 organization. The organization that has made this request, HELP, is not a 501c3 organization. It is a registered California corporation that's nonprofit. By definition, by the rules of the California Corporation Code, mutual benefit corporations are precluded from being a 501c3. So the only possible avenue for this organization to access our employees' paychecks would be through the second category, and it does not have 250 employees belonging to its organization. Further, it appears from what was submitted earlier that this organization is basically a pass-through for the Dearborn National Life Insurance Company. And we have our own life insurance program through Flex Benefits. Also, in the material that was submitted with its request, it indicated that it has payroll deduction status with the County of Los Angeles. We contacted the county to find out about that, and they reported that they have had a very negative experience with this organization, and it was also just a pass-through for the Dearborn National Insurance Company. So we are recommending against providing voluntary payroll deduction status for this organization, as it does not meet the qualifications under the Ad Code, and further also additional section of the Ad Code that describes that it must provide a benefit. And based on the experience that the county has had, that further supports not granting voluntary payroll status deduction status to this organization.
How does it qualify under the county but not under our rules? Are our rules substantially different?
In a short answer, yes. We're controlled by the Los Angeles Administrative Code provisions. The county is not. The county has a different process. Theirs is set up through their equivalent to their Employee Relations Board. It's a whole different process that we have in the city. But they are taking steps to deal with that.
So I wonder, irrespective of how good this particular applicant is, whether we should be broadening our rules to be more in the county's direction, whether they're moving more to tighten it up in our direction, or somewhere in between.
They're moving to tighten it up more in our direction, not the other way around. It's a whole different access that they have set up versus it's really apples and oranges. But given that the organization brought that up in its request as support for the city to grant voluntary payroll deduction status, we were compelled to look into that, and it was not a favorable report.
Anything else from staff? Oh, yeah, certainly.
Has the city attorney, has they concur with the CAO on this?
I received this report today. Carolyn and I spoke briefly about this about 10 minutes before the meeting. So I'd have to say, no, I've not thoroughly reviewed this. But looking at it on the surface from what she's indicated, if these facts as alleged are true, that she discovered in her independent review, then her conclusion would seem to be accurate. But I've not looked at this independently.
I was just, the motion says that HELP has met all requirements of the LA Municipal Code, Administrative Code, excuse me.
What that may be referring to is there's another section of the code that is 4.820, I believe it is, and all that is the first step for an organization to be registered with the city clerk, but that alone does not grant voluntary payroll deduction status.
Okay. So this is not necessarily incorrect.
Exactly.
It's just, it
Yeah.
doesn't apply to the section that's pertinent.
Correct.
Okay.
You're right.
Mr. Zine, questions?
Helping employees learn prosperity. And then it talks about help promote sound health, which we can do through our insurance companies, Kaiser or Blue Cross, which do that. Financial decisions, which the credit union offers that opportunity. And they talk about a learning center. Where's the learning center located?
I'm not aware of any learning center.
Because in the motion, it talks about a learning center through its learning center, which provides a wealth of information to inform and educate. Anyone here from Mr. LaBonge's office or Mr. Buscaino's office? They're the ones that authored and seconded this.
Our office did touch base with, I don't know if they got hold of Councilmember Buscaino's office, but I know they did with LaBonge, Councilmember LaBonge's office, and they weren't, I know there's a motion on record, but they didn't seem to recall it.
Because I find it interesting that this helping employees learn prosperity is one issue, but then it talks about sound health, which I think would be diet and exercise, and then the other financial decisions which your credit union can help with, which we have credit unions. I just find it maybe a duplication of efforts. But I want to thank the CAO, you in particular,
Thank you.
for finding this information, because it doesn't sound like something that we'd want to subscribe to, especially since the county's having problems, as you say, and those services are already available through other resources that the city has. So why we create something that's already there?
I don't think that's the important consideration, because we have, on our payroll deduction, we have, I think it's about 100 different organizations. It's a whole bunch, maybe dozens and dozens of organizations. But they have to meet certain criteria, and
Exactly.
that's what the ad code addresses. But the problem is if you don't create some level of standards, each time you broaden the rules, you're opening the doors to more and more payroll deductions.
Well, it's your dues that pays for that. Your check pays for that.
Yeah, but it's the payroll deduction
Comes out of your income.
categories. It's not like paying a bill. It's not like service. My question is about it's typically they're charitable organizations providing us. I think the people are here, and this what does HELP do? I don't know what help is and what does it do. And I think,
I find it very interesting.
Yeah, we still have a speaker, so.
I really want
we
to know
can
what
ask
they
them
do
that.
more than anything.
And
Question.
your check is, you have the resting, but I think the safeguards need to be in place, but whatever the dues are, to be deductions for certain expenses, this would come out,
Well, the way it would work,
a member of help. Is it $1 a period? Is it $5? Was that ever discussed?
they're offering is whatever product of life insurance would be, employees would sign up, and whatever it costs to buy that level, not just for protecting through payroll deduction, there's obviously concern, sure organizations qualify under our employees' paychecks and doing the proper vetting and making to the city, as you said, the standard that we have, but there's also some risk of liability.
It's a lot of money every time we add one.
But it doesn't
Not
say,
judicious in that
It
area.
also costs us,
if you found that it's an insurance company. No, I don't support this, but I'm looking at it doesn't say anything about insurance.
This
That's
request
not
was
here.
made to this committee. Well, when they, that's part of the record. When Dearborn National Committee, it's part of the council file. There's a letter from Addis.
But
So
do they
that is
say-
part of the council wording, helps request to gain voluntary payroll deduction status.
Insurance,
No, but council file record.
but do they say they're the umbrella for this help? The Dearborn Insurance?
Connecting the dots, and also it, based on the county's experience and based on with the talking to a CIPSA, because they had some experience as well, airports organization, and they've approached on their own. They've approached Harbor Department and
Because I don't see any insurance in a similar program.
yes.
Sound Health, to me, all I see is the two aspects that they cite in the motion.
Of the file.
That would be
Right, I can show you
diet
what
and
was.
exercise.
I can show you what was part, when it was in committee in October, because this was October.
It shows April.
I believe it was in April, the motion was introduced, and then it was actually heard in committee in October. And,
27th. when it
right,
came
and
to
then,
this
and
committee.
then it was in committee in October. Sorry, I have it. And let me grab
The representative help, yeah, I'd like to do that. Why don't we hear from
And I would like to thank you.
Tanya Mackey?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Mack. I'll address some of those issues that were allowing me to address your committee today on an item that's very important to me, and I will organization helping employees learn prosperity. See, old office it says. I am the board chairperson with the organization affiliation for Prosperity. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan, and represent an independent employer in Los Angeles. HELP is the past 13 years. HELP has served in this capacity with the County of Line Payroll Code, EO, registered employee organization with Los Angeles County with an assigned city. We have 124. We are currently seeking to become an employee organization with the LA. On November, followed and met all the requirements of the Los Angeles Administrative Code by the employee organization with LA. 22nd, 2010, HELP filed for recognition as a qualification was to obtain a city payroll city. Per the city clerk, the only remaining step that we needed to accomplish currently in the city code. That issue is the reason that we are here in front of your committee today. To our members of Los Angeles, we are providing voluntary benefits and TPA services, 10% of LA City, which number over 4,000 city employees, which is roughly, we have done everything that the employee population. We have been working on this process for a long time. January 2011, been asked to do, except for maybe turn some cartwheels. In city approval, the city clerk's office notified us that the final step includes Los Angeles Administrative Code Council approval, which would require an ordinance to amend and modify the authorizing a code, Division 4, Article 2, Section 4.203, page 2, has confirmed that a voluntary payroll deduction code for help. The city controller, this code would help at the existing payroll system can accommodate this request. Current city employees and to solicit voluntary participation from both retired and collections, dues, etc., and provide a menu of services such as TPA functions, premium, Allstate, Aflac. Because of our long-standing relationships with various insurance carriers, Allstate, both a Washington Mutual, just to name a few, we were able to secure through guarantee issue disability plan. I have brochures if you like one, and again for Los Angeles City and illness program designed specifically and exclusively for health organization, county employees. These guarantee plans can only be purchased through offer an affordable legal plan. We also provide a discount buying service to help employees save. We offer a program, and we know how devastating to help mitigate against life events, as well as a comprehensive identity theft, web-based learning stating that can be. We offer scholarships. Currently providing these centers, newsletters. We have great benefits and services. We are payroll deduction programs to LA City, LA County, and DWP via important.
Right.
Now, this is the part where we're here for twofold, and this is extremely. However, OJB and we've been offering these benefits payroll deduction through Oscar Joe Bryan Foundation business any longer. Informed us that they do not wish to be involved in payroll deduction benefits American police officers advance as they want to focus on their core mission, which is assisting African American about 4 throughout the ranks of LAPD. As a result of their decision being deducted through OJB, 4,000 help members who are also city employees currently their disability, their retirement are in danger of losing their valuable insurance coverages. They all will be jeopardized, and supplements, IRAs, all of their programs will be to deduct their premiums. As a result of lapsed coverages, because they will no longer have a deduction agency, their coverages. Even this cannot happen. 4,000 city employees losing or help will voluntarily do. Though OJB has decided to not provide this benefit anymore, what we're seeking today is a payroll do this. We'll happily do this. Voluntary benefits are what we do. Issue. For the deduction code that will provide the proper solution to alleviate this benefits to various associations. Past 30 years, we have been providing TPA services and voluntary state and federal governments, associations, unions, organizations within city, county.
Because I am giving you a lot more than the.
I would like to mention a few. Of course,
And I'll have to ask you to wrap up.
Please.
2 minutes.
I will wrap up. DWP employees, various Los Angeles Police Relief Association dating back to 1988, Police Association, NCIU unions, firefighter unions, Los Angeles County for why we're here to so on, and I'm wrapping it up. We also have many supporters for our request for Diamond Assembly Day. Former retired and now recently passed Congressman Mervyn Benefit, Mamie Grant, member Wilma Carter, Tony Lee, CEO of Dickerson Employee Benefit, Dearborn National, and by the way, of chairperson of the Coalition for Employment, David Garish, for the organization that they go through. Dearborn National does not use us in LA City. They already have an employee or two to Dearborn for LA City. This is not a pass-through to offer those programs consideration, and I ask for your, they don't even use us for LA City. Again, we thank you for your city employees as we're currently doing to support. We're excited to continue to provide this service and opportunity to gotten the report prior county employees. I don't know if any negative reports from the county employees. If I had of LA County, I would have gotten a letter from the employee relationship chief with LA County that we are in good standing and we do not have any problems. with reason of having any problems. Employees, we've been doing that for over 13 years, and we've never been called in for any reasons at this time.
Well,
So again, I consider your support, and we're happy to answer any questions.
services that I have one. So just to clarify, you're already providing the exact,
Yeah, well, yes, we're
talking about offering, but just through another entity that is discontinuing that function. City.
Oh, yes, we provide it to LA County. We have an assigned code. We've gone through all the.
No, I'm talking about LA City.
They currently want to get back to we were providing these benefits through Oscar Joe Bryant Foundation, but they be in the payroll
Right.
reduction benefits anymore. Their core mission, which is helping African-American officers advance through the ranks. They don't want to.
A completely new entity.
Or-
So I understand that. So you're basically saying, we're looking at this as thousands of city employees that are doing that we are adding, but in reality, we're talking about whether to continue in this currently, in essence, the same way that they have been. I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of confusing facts here, but before we began the item, the bottom line is we got this report 5 seconds before we haven't had either, unless they're. I haven't had a chance to do any due diligence. I'm sure my colleague of this item, so we have a chance to. They're more psychic than I expected. So I'd be inclined just to continue, but no, to do our own due diligence. I could have said that. Entertain
I've
now.
been around the city for 45.
Psychic. So, and unless anyone else has any other questions, which I'm happy to.
Never even knew you existed. 5 years, and I was a former member of OJB. Never heard of this organization in 45 years with the city of Los Angeles. I was a former member of the LAPD for 33. And if you've got 4,000 members, it's interesting that I'd like to have OJB 3 active years and a councilman for 12. I've never heard of it, and a former member of OJB. That's what it's about, because if you look at the motion and the other mentioned organizations come forward and testify in this committee as we want to do to protect these folks, the motion speaks nothing about what you're referring to, insurance that's lapsed, et cetera, which decisions. It doesn't list anything. It just talks about help, sound health, and financial, whether they're happy or not. So, in the motion from what you're referring to. So, and then the question regarding the county, further review. What I think in fairness to you and respect to you, it needs to have further analysis this time.
May I-
Whether it's accepted or denied, there's a lot of unresolved questions.
motion that they didn't want to be in the business. We address
Sure.
that. OJB just let us know after that Valley City anyway,
But-
and we were coming forward to get our employee organization established like we did in the county.
Submitted the motion to start the ball.
Then they came up with that.
Well, somehow, Mr. LeBonge, Mr. Busquets, since you've been around a long time and it's all rolling, we'd like to hear from them what prompted them to do this motion. Mr. LeBonge was the author, never been approached before. Someone contacted them, but, I mean, there's just, he somehow was moved to do this motion, got the ball rolling.
You mentioned a CIPSA.
A tremendous amount of unresolved issues.
Like to me is that the organization and what it sounds discount and is set up to provide a variety of insurance services that are being provided to employees, and I'm not hearing any other and so I'd like to know what the mission of the nonprofit organization as to what other kinds of services are provided, and also I'd like to hear from a CIPSA also provides what they I believe a CIPSA well and insurance programs or discounts for insurance programs. Is curious why this organization was created. I'm just wondering what the relationship. Well, I'm. Turn
to move the microphone.
Our core mission is to support equity in the workplace. And I'm
A
here.
little closer to you. So.
And yeah. And,
Identify, please.
identify.
My name is James Mackey. We're here to assistant.
I'll bet. What does that mean?
to define what our core mission is to support equity in the workplace, certified organization. First of all, we know that everybody doesn't belong to a disciplinary issues work in the city. There are certain people that have issues maybe where they approach us. Now, we place issues that they might need assistance with. So assistance, we have a number of resources that we can refer individuals to for if they need representation before to qualify employee relations commissions or civil service commission, we can refer them along to a certified representation that will assist them. Everybody, again, does not belong, so forth, organization. So that's equity in the workplace, discrimination.
Of one of those associations.
Does that answer
But
your
there
question?
are numerous, and having been a president of women's organizations,
Okay.
there's African American associations, there's
We're diverse. We represent.
Hispanic organizations.
Absolutely. We're nonpartisan with a certified organization, and we represent whoever comes before us. If they don't have an affiliation,
Okay. And
request that we assist them, we will assist them.
about the substantive representation? How many? I'd like to know more about on those kinds of representation.
Okay.
Maybe like how many people you've represented,
Many people.
activities.
Over the course of the years, many.
Yeah.
We've been before the Civil Service Commission. We've been before ERCOM in the County of Los Angeles. If they have in representing individuals for whatever issues that they might have through that. If a Skelly hearing or whatever, we represent them to seek out and we provide the representation. Or we provide a resource for them to employee, of course,
So
obtain that representation.
who pays for that? Who pays for that?
Because sometimes
It's not like your dues cover that, you'd still have to pay an additional fee.
yeah, you got to pay that. So a hearing can run into thousands of dollars.
Remember, if SEIU, and you go,
Organization cannot be on the hook for that.
well, if you're in the Police Protective League, will hire an attorney to a hearing,
Mhm.
their bargaining unit represents you.
Right.
At LAPPL, up the money for the representation.
They would have to-
Attorney, and they'll pay for that.
Right.
With the organization, the individual would have to then put,
If they would have to do that.
We're non-union.
okay.
Because if it, like I said, everybody's not represented. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we would like to.
Continue this for,
Yeah,
if there are not any other questions or comments, I'm going to recommend that we continue timeline that's tighter. 30 days unless there's any problem with any kind of
Could I just add one thing to
to come back with answers to all these questions. And
the online banking?
Sure.
To maybe supplement. Given a checking account, there's nothing to stop options that employees have now for deductions from their check to make arrangements. An employee who wants to sign up for insurance, the city's on their own to pay for their products without having to use secure insurance payroll deduction process. So if you wanted to, for example, deduction process to do that, to Dearborn National, doesn't have to be through the payroll.
I think my objection, right, well, all of that may be well and good, but that's before this item. So I think that stands that we've had a report for about 5 seconds.
I would like to know which category.
Enough to
By the way,
require us to have the time for us to do our own due diligence.
Well, Mr. Alarcon,
category you feel you fit in.
Number two,
Number 2? Okay, thank you.
number two.
Well, if we,
No, I think you should.
and I will not be here in 30 days, so this will probably go through a
Oh.
whole new hearing.
do we have,
Continue at 30 days.
Do we have a date to meet in June before we're done? That actually might not be a bad idea. Prefer to have let's continue this to the 18th then. I think that's actually a fair point. Wise counsel of my two departing colleagues, so that would be good.
Get OJB and the other organization.
Well, they might prefer not to have to do this, but we'll grab them anyway.
And if we could get
And if you could give us,
organizations you mentioned to come forward and give their testimony, that would help.
we should everybody here have had, that would be opportune. In writing before that time, your responses to a lot of the comments that we've
And as well.
come soon as well.
And we will try to have a representative from ASIPSA attend.
Office or Tom as well. And let's have everybody that's relevant and
Yeah.
maybe a representative from Tom Labange's office. Yeah. Everybody that we talked about, there's a lot of entities that we'd like to hear from.
Staff in reviewing this matter. But I have one question that will assist my independent of that. Independent of the dues deductions through OJB, voluntary payroll deduction, do you feel you meet the qualifications of number 2? In other words, are you receiving outside of those that have been facilitated by OJB? Right from OJB?
No.
No. You don't have any other direct, aside you've been associated?
And the department through the city?
Yes.
No, everything we're
It's
doing
through
is-
OJB.
is
That's the
paid.
only organization.
Benefits and Fund of Water and Power, where they've asked us to do their TPA and their
And how many employees are?
their third-party administration services through another employer organization.
And
Probably about 50.
service through DWP?
We just started with them, so I wanted us to do the TPA work. They came to us because we have a good record, we have a good track
Right
record.
there.
And they
To date certain, June.
Committee right now.
Thank you. So we'll continue this item, certainly, June 18th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Donation of feline respiratory.
Item number 9.
Item 9, Department of Animal Services report relative to acceptance of $150 for vaccines from the firm of Bollinger Ingelheim Vetmedica in the amount of $30,000.
It's generally pretty routine. And this is, I mean, accepting these kinds of things, vaccines, so, but it's kind of an unusual donation to be accepting that are safe for animals. I mean, I have questions about whether the department tests these vaccines to make sure they're as safe as we do this. Accepted vaccines before, what's the process to make sure everything?
Don't have all your questions. Good afternoon, council members. John Chavez with the Department of Animal Services about his ability to, or answers to your questions, Councilman. I do know that we consulted with our chief vet, received them to use these particular vaccines, and he's very grateful to. But we did, if you'd like, we can report back with some, responses to your questions. Nearly 4,000. We did get this donation. It's worth about over $30,000. Provide us, 1,000 doses, and our board did approve the donation. We're asking that the council
I'd appreciate that.
allow us to accept the donation as well. But we can get back to you with some of your questions.
Okay, so we'll approve this. Other comments, questions?
No.
Okay. Process is to accept without objection and ask for a report back on what the specific, thank you,
Thank you.
accept vaccines and what we do to make sure that we've done that safely.
We will do that.
City Attorney reports and draft order.
Item number 10.
Item 10, continued from January 15, 2013. Computer exemptions for dogs and cats relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code. Dogs and cats impounded by the Department of Health at the age of 4 months, modifying the breeding permit provisions, requiring sterilization of stray dog advisory committee. Animal Services, and deleting the reference in the Los Angeles Municipal Code to the spay neuter.
Thank you. If you'd give us, welcome, Ms. Barnett.
To do was tighten.
A brief description of the item before us.
Sure, absolutely. What we were trying, we have the spay-neuter ordinance a little bit, and also at the same time to simplify it. We wanted to make that there are sort of 8 points to the recommendation. So the part that's underlined, the breed registry, something that was definable. Breed registry with registered in the document that it's a national or international. The registries registration guidelines that are sort of standard because some of the breeder didn't have much to go with them. Basically, the name of the dog, but no. So we wanted it to know information about previous generations, name of breeder, be an identification of the breed, date of birth, names of registered sire and death. So we wanted in record keeping related to the breeding, transfer of ownership. We had the registration to be a little bit more defined and specific as it relates to animals. We also want to delete the exempt required to be animals being trained for various purposes. Animals being trained are not required and they're being shown altered. So if they are part of the breed registration, that exemption on in those kind of shows, they already have that exemption, so we saw no reason to leave it. We wanted animals who are being trained for various purposes because it's not required for medical deferments. When we to change the exemption and specifically to tighten the exemption, we need to have some way to allow animals not to be spayed or neutered for medical reasons until such time as to track those, to have regular report backs from the veterinarian has been taken care of so that as the animal is old enough or the seriousness of the medical condition has passed, sometimes getting an animal can be spayed and neutered. I think, as you know, we have had trouble in saying that the animal an animal back. We've had open-ended documents from veterinarians and that we need to know for sure had a deferment, and we believe that we need to have that animal re-examined. Otherwise, that we need to have them sure that animal remains a surgical risk, spayed or neutered. It's just a housekeeping task to work was complete. Eliminate the spay-neuter advisory committee. That committee that we put in.
So that body
in October of 2009. So that's just a little housekeeping piece. October 31st, 2009.
He hasn't been meeting since then.
No, they completed their work and submitted a report. So that was just housekeeping. We want to circumstances of stray add a section to the code requiring sterilization under most come in unaltered owned animals impounded by the department. Now, if animals deem them, we want to tighten because they're running it loose. People can come in and cut ownership by reducing the number, that down a little bit. It's intended to combat irresponsible subjected to impound of instances where an unaltered animal is found at large, again and again return to its owner. Just to have that, happen. Proposal that was originally part, and so it's similar to a report for the City of Los Angeles of proposed state legislation in 2009, but we want to bring it back and ask under the code section on penalty. Also, the penalties are not waived if the non-compliance to specify the penalties imposed on the section. Somebody just to be able to say, well, here, client owner transfers or abandons the animal in question. So we don't want just to abandon the animal. I'm going to give you the dog, so I no longer have this fine. Or to be able to, that's just to give us a little bit more ability to enforce. Requiring periodic update and also kind of housekeeping to add a section, and then and or clarification of terminology as appropriate language to the breeding permit. I think one of the things that's new is to add setting forth additional requirement code requiring that animals permitted to breed be microchipped and microchip requirements for and restrictions upon the issuance of breeding permits so that we do have already good ordinance. to track that animal. So basically, we're trying to strengthen and offer.
Pounding as a stray,
Very good. Any questions?
where it comes to statements, shall be microchipped, we should include in those, say shall, that's mandatory, because it says impound a stray, it just says to be microchipped, which doesn't leave options. And may is permissive, so there's areas where you'd want to include shall,
I was working off of the board. Thank
and
you.
may does leave options.
Thank you. It may be correct in the ordinance. This would
Make sure that it's not,
report, Mr. LaSalle.
I'll check the ordinance to
I just wanted,
permissive but mandatory.
Right. Thank you.
regarding you to address the letter from Phyllis Hardy. Well,
Brenda can address.
Exemption F.
And maybe we should let Phyllis speak first also, and then
The letter claims that
all of her.
I didn't read Phyllis's letter. I'm sorry.
specifically, I was just wondering, breeding permits being issued, is that correct? The exemption F has resulted in more than 1,000 F, which provide
I'm sorry.
the provision, the exemption F, in addition to an unaltered, provides that a dog owner can avoid the requirement to spay and neuter a dog by merely paying for a breeder's permit. 1,000 breeding permits being issued in license. And then it claims that this provision has resulted in more than 1,000
Respond to that briefly.
in the city merely to allow intact dogs.
Councilman, if I could, this ordinance.
Sure.
As you know, we were sued over this, any of the other exemptions, and that provision allowing an owner who would not fit into our ordinance was constitutional. Purchase a breeder's permit is what enabled the court to find that our section would cause us some problem. So we won that lawsuit because of that section. So removing that section.
Had there been 1,000 breed? Okay, but that wasn't my question. My question was
You know, I'm looking at
breeding permits issued as a result of that exemption.
in 2006, we had a part of the board report which talks about the intact licenses, and 143, 2011, 11,584, 2007, 10,174, 2008, 8,359, 2009, 5,001, 2,300, 2010, 3,626, and 2011. Whether or not that's because of 66. So the number of intact licenses has declined. Now, whether the fee increase or the number of animals, I cannot tell you at this time.
Breeder's permit.
Well-
When you say intact licenses, is that how does that relate to a breed? Is that what that means?
Well, if you have an intact license, you have a breeder, you get that goes with that.
That this is not correct?
Yes.
So you're saying
To 2007, there's a decline. Well, I'm saying that if I just look at the numbers reported each year from 2006,
right.
fine. But I'm not giving you a reason for it because I don't honestly know if it's the fees.
So if we do something with
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we may have a problem.
it's already opened up another lawsuit, is what you're saying, Mr. City Attorney.
If we remove that section.
About removing anything. I just asked.
Already been ruled in court. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear. Nobody said anything. It wasn't the only action that you can take to alter question. I wasn't implying anything, and removing is he did, Dove. But we love you and something, so to speak.
I sort of jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Speaker from the public.
Anyway,
Well, let's alter this discussion by having a Phyllis Doherty.
The number of breeders' permits did. Phyllis started the Animal Issues Movement, and yes, when she was here. And they'd go, according to Linda Barth, they had gone from 232 to 1,750. Law changed with our new spay-neuter order. That was because before that, you could get an intact license without a breeder's permit. When that of licenses that you had, then you had to get a breeder's permit. So that's the number. But to make it a requirement before had nothing to do with breeders' permits. People just didn't bother with breeders' permits. Permit, whether you intend to keep an intact animal, you now have to have a breeder's for this. I'll just go ahead and breed or not. Of course, it's created more breeders because a lot of people have said, well, since I have to pay one, which you remember, Jackie Spires anyway. But the issue is that when we fought for SB 820, as far state law that would allow breed-specific legislation, dangerous. If there's an spay and neuter, as long as no animal or no breed is declared and have been for a long time, as a population issue, you can create breed-specific legislation. And what we're asking for, no need to have that for pit bulls and Commissioner Reardon brought it up most recently, is that exemption F, and probably even Chihuahuas, which constitute well over 50% of the shelter population, intact so that you can fight it, even more of the impound. What we're doing is, in other words, to keep your pit bull rampantly legally. Just go buy a breeding permit, now you can breed it. So people are breeding it, say, for the next 2. So we're saying that there's no need to do that, for you could do it on a 2-year moratorium period, and Chihuahuas unaltered until 2 years. You will not be able to keep your pit bulls and pit bulls unless they are involved in show or one of the other exemptions, medical exemptions. Hot sale item, and it's always create litters of up to 13 puppies. They're pit bulls and Chihuahuas, all for dog fighting or to sell the puppies. There's no reason to breed more. Program. I'll finish the target. Let's let it catch up, get it under control. And then, because the target supposed to be put in your district to spay and neuter, programs are not working. Ms. Barnett herself admitted that out of all the money that was 23 pit bulls got and the big programs that were going to target by all the big organizations, 20 yards, and they're fighting them, and those spayed or neutered. People don't want to do it because they're making money out of their back. Exempt them. I mean, it's the only reason to breed them. So there's no reason not to exemption the extremely high, not allow exemption F for them for a while on the basis of the overpopulation, the euthanasia rate and the high euthanasia rate. Ms. Barnett said at the last meeting that she was even talking to her captains because shelters. So this is a humane thing, maintaining of pit bulls.
I'll have to ask you.
Is having such a negative impact on the shelter.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions.
To do it works toward no kill, and it stops this problem.
I seem to Ms. Doherty, if
Sure.
you don't mind. One is related to. I've forgotten that one, so let me go to the other one. The second question that I was going to ask you,
This would-
the city attorney's issue with the legal.
Breed, because the other breeds are not changed the exemption issue at all as far as any other.
Was that
Not a disproportionate
No.
problem.
What Mr. LaSalle said, constitutionality. That provision specifically was included to address the concern of
It's not an issue with.
in the court.
I'm not saying to take it away, allow you to other breeds, but the reason that 821 was passed was to allow proportionately create restrictions on breeding of animals that were dismembers. When we're having to use a problem to the community, to the shelters, because of their number, do something. We can't continue to euthanize 70% of the Chihuahuas and pit bulls that come in. We need to do.
All I'm asking is, how do you?
You to just go on with a little spay neuter.
And again, I'm not. I don't want you to jump ahead either.
Yeah.
Concerns raised by. How do we square the
I'm not saying to change.
Mr. LaSalle about the legal constitutional requirement?
You don't, the breeds that are being exemption F, there's no reason to change it except to create a restriction on them to be euthanized. That can be disproportionately in the shelters and but we have a done without changing exemption F.
How?
For everyone else by a breeder's permit specific.
How do you do that?
Because anyone else can come in and just specifically why that state legislation.
Right. But you can do that with exemption
You are
F.
allowed under 821, that was specific legislation for the purpose was passed, was to allow any local entity to create breed purpose of the fact that this purpose of spay and neuter, not dangerous dogs, not anything else, but for the
Those-
so it
I
doesn't
understand-
change.
I understand.
These two breeds, we are being inhumane to them.
No, I understand all those, understanding your legal argument here.
Doesn't change
Phyllis,
F.
Phyllis, I understand
Mr.
all the
Alarcon,
rhetoric.
I think this is
I'm-
more a question for the city attorney.
Yeah, I'm not, a-
Is. It doesn't change F. F still stays in the ordinance, just the way it is. Breeders, they,
but then people could get the,
not pit bulls and Chihuahua, continue to breed because of the high rate of use. Should not be allowed to just because they want to breed. You're allowed to.
Guidance.
That makes three of us.
Euthanasia.
yeah, I would like to get.
I mean, I agree with that philosophically, but I really need the
That's not-
city attorney's.
In taking away that right. I agree with it philosophically, but I think from a legal standpoint, we would have a difficulty
Doesn't differentiate based on.
for owners of Chihuahuas and Pit Bulls.
So do you think if they make legal sense, though? The arguments made by Ms. Doherty, which make common sense, I don't know.
I don't know whether it would be. It does make common sense. We know that there's a problem with those breeds. So much mixing falls in easy on a practical basis to always determine which animals, since they're so at removing to those breeds. But more than that, I don't know how a court would look at that right away from owners of what it considered to be a necessary part of the ordinance when we take the Pit Bulls and Chihuahuas.
When we take the right to what? To breed?
The breeder's permit is giving right to keep their animal intact. It's not really the right to breed. What
Have a pathway to,
is the right to keep the animal intact, and that was what the court focused on.
in other words, we had to keeping your dog intact if you so choose.
Correct.
Of pit bulls remain intact. So would the court ever take into account the fact that a lot of
What,
act just so they can breed them and fight them?
possibly, possibly not. I would prefer, what you would be doing is you would be throwing it into the court to make that determination. Challenged, that we make that change in a separate ordinance so that if we get challenged,
Agree with the other recommendations?
it stands by itself.
And that was my first question. Do you agree
Population much.
in the report?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're just housekeeping. It's nothing
Okay.
that major. It's not going to make a difference in
Yeah.
SB 821. This is really serious, and that's why,
Yeah.
we fought so hard for.
We have an agreement.
This is not, I don't think Doug's even familiar with that measure.
I agree, but where we're not convinced on the practical reality, we haven't, and I think that's where we should legal strategy that separate and apart from the entire, otherwise focus our attention. And I also agree with the city attorney that we probably want to do this.
And they're doing fine with it,
Well, all these other things would be in jeopardy.
as long as we do it. San Francisco's done
The suggestion that we move forward.
Well, we got 26 days, Phyllis.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to make an ordinance to with this item, and that we request back from the city attorney's office at a later time in the future. Take this second step with pit bulls and chihuahuas, and we do that.
About $235?
How much is how much is a breeder's permit?
I believe it's about.
Discourage that, 235? So it might be an option to increase the fee to
Probably more people that.
particular process.
My guess is, if I might, my guess is that there are probably permit.
Okay.
Breed their animals in the city without a permit than necessarily with a.
I hope you're going to set a time limit on this.
Which is another issue which someday we will hopefully follow up on and enforce as well. Let's ask.
We've been asking for this for a long time.
I don't think it'll be of any great to come back within the next 60 days with that ordinance. So we have one more speaker, Hayes. Great controversy, or I would make it more quick.
I totally support.
You're done. Lynn from Take Me Home Rescue.
Hi, I'm Hayes. And on two things, changes. I do think. No, God.
Oh, sorry again.
But I totally support it. No, I totally support everything. All the change spay and neuter is because the differential licensing works. As a rescuer on the street, the only way we get people to more people will spay and neuter because breeding permit is getting higher and higher. The higher it goes, the breeding permits to go, the better. It's an easier, cheaper option. So I totally agree. The higher we can get basically for pit bulls and chihuahuas. Also for the other ordinance, I was wondering too if we did highest kill rate. So what if not that we're being breed specific, that we're picking on those breeds, but right now they are the threshold down. If we did the 3 highest kills, or whatever our 2 highest kills are, and we get in there, until we get of those numbers, we could maybe move on to the next breeds. I do boxers. I would love to have boxer bulls. I mean, we're in thresholds down, we can move to other breeds. But right now it is Chihuahuas and pit. I hope you guys do look into that. I think dated, and the strays we're catching. There's so many. So I'm killing these animals, and LA it would be very successful, and hopefully the court would understand that we are spending a lot of money.
But
does not want to. LA wants to save them. So thank you.
and if we could pass an ordinance that said that
Could you, I have a question for you.
movie producers cannot produce Beverly Hills Chihuahua 3 and 4.
Wait. What did you mean by that? You said it's a good thing that breeder permits are hired.
Your altered permit. So like the difference.
More of them, or?
Well, the rate is higher. So if you spay and neuter yours and it works, is lower than if you want to keep your animal intact. That's differential licensing. If you have to keep it intact, I mean, for rescuers to say, oh, well, if you spay and neuter, it's only, 100 difference. That
You were talking in terms of the...
It's, 230. The more that we can get that apart and the bigger, because you have to buy a breeder's permit and...
Cost.
The cost.
When it's higher, you're talking about the cost.
The cost, yeah, to buy your permit. Those two things go, an unaltered permit, in order to keep your animal intact. So the higher the...
I see what you're saying.
How long's the
easier it is for rescuers to explain to people, oh, it's just cheaper to spay and neuter.
Okay.
Okay. Permit good for? 1 year?
Forward and ask for the other ordinance. All right, so without objection, we will move this item, and so it's back in 60 days. And that is our last item.